Mass attack. One of the most hated doctrines simply because everyone thinks that it sucks. And I'm gonna be honest, I used to think the same. Until I decided I might as well give it a go. And this is how it turned out. I started off as Italy, took over Tunisia and Albania, and then went for my first victim, Yugoslavia. I sent 750,000 mass troops into their country, and it was going to be very easy. But surprisingly, he had a good ally. Egypt decided to help him out and sent some maneuver tanks into my country. I tried to stop him from landing by making infantry on the cities that he was invading, but his tanks were too strong. It successfully landed because I didn't have the right infantry tech against them, but that wasn't a problem because I was easily able to take over Yugoslavia's capital. And I knew that at the start of the game, Egypt's tanks would be stronger than infantry. And even though I would be able to outlast Egypt and beat him, it would be smarter to just force peace Yugoslavia and then prepare to defeat Egypt later. So that's what I did. I started to auto-capture with the troops that I had left and was easily able to take over Yugoslavia. And that was one person down, and the easiest one that I was going to face. Now, in order for mass attack to be as strong as it is, you need to pair it up with communism. So while I was making factories and building up a stable eco, even though Russia wasn't accepting my damn tungsten trades, I was starting to finally become strong and started to prepare to take over Turkey as they would be my gateway into Russia. While I was mountain specializing my infantry so I could easily take over Turkey, Germany declared on my ally, the UK, and sent an attacker to my huge stack, and I didn't want to move it because it was mountain specializing, and I was already in a huge deficit, and if I moved them, it would stop becoming mountain spec. So that one attacker did a bunch of damage to my infantry, and I went into debt. So of course, I knew that I couldn't let that slide. So I first spammed a bunch of fighters before I went into debt to kill his attacker, and sent infantry to defend his 800 tank stack he moved into me, and even with the lower military spending and being unmasked, I was easily able to kill his tanks. I also moved my infantry that I was using to take over North Africa into my mainland, so I could defend just in case he sent more tanks into my country. In Rising Nations, if you're in debt, your military spending automatically goes down, so that made my troops much weaker. But I still knew that I had to push into him no matter what. So I gathered over 1 million infantry, and right when I was going to send them into Germany, he sent another attacker into my troops that still got damage done to me, even though this time I had fighters to defend. After I got that attacker out of the way, I moved my stack through Germany, which he tried to defend with his tanks. And this battle shows just how strong mass attack is, because even though my military spending is very low, my infantry was still able to defeat his tanks and even take over his capital. Like, how is that fair? He surprised me with his attack, I went into debt, but I'm still the one who ends up taking his capital. This only worked because of mass attack, and I'm the best player in Rising Nations, and thankfully I got an IMF intervention which gave me over $3.5 billion, and I let my troops that were near Turkey reinforce before I sent them in to kill off Germany. I auto-captured with all my troops, but while I was committing war crimes all over Germany, I saw Russia building up, but he was building up to try and defend against me, as he knew that he wouldn't be able to attack me and win. And I knew that he wasn't going to attack because he sent me many ally requests. But since Russia has the audacity to ignore all of my trades that I sent to him, I was going to finish him off. So that's what I started to prepare doing after I appeased Germany. Now this war was probably the hardest one, as it took the longest. I made 14 million infantry and split them up, for some to go into Turkey and the rest to go into Russia. Now Russia was also on mass attack, because he actually started off with 18 million infantry, which was 4 million more than me. But I still had the advantage because I was the one on the attack, and my troops were just better overall. I easily pushed into Russia and Turkey, but the first thing that Russia did was send his huge 70 stack of fighters to kill mine, which made me think that he was going to either bomb me or use a bunch of attackers to try and weaken my troops. So I spammed so much more fighters and finished off the fighter doctrine so that I would be prepared against any attack that he sent. I also kept making more infantry in Germany so I could keep pushing into them and overwhelm them with the amount of troops that were taking over their lands. Since Russia was also unmasked, he had infantry and used them to push back into his captured lands. But honestly, all this did was delay the inevitable, which was that he was going to die to me. But before him was Turkey, as Turkey started to break apart way before Russia. But in the end, the result was the same. They were both under the great Italian rule. When I had finally finished taking over Turkey and Russia, I started to take over the other lands that I needed in order to form the Roman Empire, which included taking the UK, who was my ally. But before I was going to go for him, he left the game, so that left me with one less player to go to war with. But then, when I thought that I was going to finally form and I had all the land that I needed, I realized that Ethiopia had one single city in Egypt that I needed to form. So I tried asking for it in chat, and in the notice board, but of course they ignored me. So I had to end up sending my infantry to their land and kill them too, just for one single city. So I sent over 15 million infantry into Ethiopia, and this was just too easy. It was as if I was fighting an AI, and I knew that Ethiopia was good because he was actually above me in rankings before the war started, but no country would be able to handle all of the infantry that I was sending to them. So I thought taken over Ethiopia and would be able to form. But no, of course they had land in Asia, but I thought that would be fine because I had North Korea as an ally who would easily be able to take them over their land, right? No, because even though North Korea was a great ally, he was too focused on nuking India and wasn't able to take over the Ethiopian land in Asia. What I originally wanted to do was form first and then take over India. But since Korea was focused on fighting them, and I didn't want to send my infantry all the way to China to take over Ethiopia, I decided that I would take over India first. And again, it was too easy. I now specialized 11 million infantry and auto-captured India. I also sent troops to take over Cuba and his allies, which were Canada and the US, because why not? More land for me. But while I was taking over India, I made one mistake. I tried to group all my infantry together to kill his one huge stack of troops, and this is something you should never do, because unless it's a one city country, you don't need to focus on killing their troops on one city, and should just focus on auto-capturing their other land, as it would be much easier to force peace them. But for some reason, India had land in Africa. Like, seriously, bro? What are we doing? Ethiopia has land in Asia and India and Africa. Like, you do not need to colonize when you have so much land around you. Either way, I was able to show the true power of mass attack and take over India. And this proves that mass attack is the strongest doctrine right now in Rising Nations. Also, make sure to like and subscribe if you made it this far, and watch these two other videos, and let me know if you like this fast-paced type of like showing the wars more than like how I built up and everything, or you want me to go back to how I did it before. I also formed every single one of Italy's formables.